Welcome to the Great Security Debate. This show has experts taking sides to help broaden understanding of a topic. Therefore, it's safe to say that the views expressed are not necessarily those of the people we work with or for. Heck, they may not even represent our own views, as we take a position for the sake of the debate. Our website is greatsecurity.debate.net, and you can contact us via email at feedback@greatsecurity.debate.net or on Twitter @security_debate. Now, let's join the debate already in progress.
And that we just rely on Microsoft and whatever that version of Defender they're calling now within Exchange Online, if that's even called Exchange Online anymore.
Has no less than 14 words, the brand name, I promise you.
Yeah. Well, they keep throwing curveballs. The marketing department keeps changing everything, right? Because it's not Azure AD anymore. I don't even know what they're calling it. Then if you look at DLP and all those SKUs, it's now Purview. Okay. And then, I mean, I don't know. They're a train wreck that we're all watching in progress. It's the same thing. And I think, Dan, you sent a text message out to us that they made a bunch of changes on MFA and the way it was handled and forcing people to.
Oh, yeah. I'm still reeling from this.
No. They just, hey, we're going to do this. We'll let you know after the fact.
Oh, and by the way, we're going to also make it very difficult for your users to figure out how to get to their own TOTP application. We're going to encourage them through dark patterns to not use the other products. We're just going to send them right into Microsoft Authenticator. And then, oh, wait, you've already got 900 users in Microsoft Authenticator. Let's sell you the E5 upsell. Woo! Just all of this crap. I'm all for using security as a business differentiator and as a competitive advantage, but I'm not for using it on lock-in, and I'm not for using it as a creative bundle upsell. Right. That the thing you really want is only an E5. Security is not an upsell.
I feel like we've been ringing this bell, so is Forrester, for the longest time, that Microsoft's trying to get you on the single platform ecosystem. We've seen this before. We've seen this in the McAfee days, the semantic days, that it's a short-term play, that for the short run, maybe it is better the way things all work together, but over time, they don't innovate at the same pace as other companies jumping into the market, and you end up have security atrophy in your overall risk posture.
I mean, it's happened, but this consolidation is happening over and over and over again. Now with the, you mentioned armor blocks, which I now refer to as Splunk blocks, because they're just going to be crammed into the Cisco acquisition world. But I saw, and I'm looking for the discussion. It wasn't with you guys.
Is that kind of like a chair or a table that's off kilter, and therefore armor blocks is like the shim underneath it to get it level again?
Maybe.
It could be the Splunk that was starting to get off tilter, so they bring in this little block.
That's a near
put
given
underneath it.
But the idea,
very true though. Sorry, I was gonna say the platform, like Cisco, Checkpoint, doing the same thing, going out and buying Perimeter 81 to try to get the SASE part right, because they have their SD-WAN part that they were building, but they didn't have the SASE, so they went out and bought Perimeter 81. Like all the big guys, same thing with Palo and the acquisitions they're looking at. I think we're taking a note, Dan, from Microsoft's playbook, because Microsoft over the last year and a half, 2 years, not only did they really improve in security, right, but people were going all in from the business on E5, right? And security was like, okay, we got to make some decisions. And last year, coming into this year, it was tough because people were looking at budgets and like, well, why would I even argue? Like I can use this part of it, this part of it, this part of it, maybe not this stuff. Sorry, Dan, I totally.
No, it's, I mean, what I was gonna say was along those same lines, but we're seeing it happen. With the joke was about Splunk blocks, but the real point was about the fact that we're seeing, Cisco's already just recently merged Umbrella and their VPN, and they're starting to shove more things into this same agent, and it's pissing people off. The back channel discussion is, I'm leaving because you're cramming so much garbage that only half works into a single agent as a way to try and get it all in. I know a lot of people who are bailing on what has been an amazing service in OpenDNS and Umbrella. and bailing because of the way the packaging is happening.
Yeah, because now you got to roll out AnyConnect to do it.
Yeah.
Even if you're not a VPN user, that's the agent that they're consolidated, and it's not great. I mean, not to totally knock Microsoft, because there's individual components that are pretty good. Honestly, I am a fan of Sentinel. I like it. No, third-party integrations and stuff like that, they've still got a lot of room to grow to be comparative to something like a Splunk or some of these others that have been doing it a lot longer. But from an overall syntax, using KQL, which we've known in the open source realm for some time now, I thought was a really good move. Their DLP, and granted, they have an unfair advantage in what they can do with some of the integrations with their tools. There are some solid components to it, but yeah, I still do not like this finance play that pits the finance group against the security group, and finance ends up winning out, not on security terms. It's purely on numbers.
Mm-hmm. And
is the DLP, is the DLP easier to manage within Sentinel? Because in the licensing, when I was going through it, I thought you could do E3 and then add on the functionality to get DLP and Purview, but you didn't have to necessarily do Sentinel.
There is.
I
There's an add-on SKU that you can do, but they've already figured this out, that once you get to 2 products, you might as well go for E5, because we're going to price you out of the game.
Yeah.
To your question about management, easy management and Microsoft are never in the same sentence. It works, but
2 different M's.
They always need more clicks. I mean, even with Sentinel, one of my biggest beefs on it, you build a dashboard, there's no click-throughs from the original. So now I got to see something in a dashboard, and then I'm going, all right, now I got to dive deeper. And I got to write my own queries to get to it. Again, getting better, but not there yet. Whereas Splunk, I create the dashboard, I can click right through. Hey, here's the query that's actually running it. Now I can get to the raw data. It's much, much quicker. And that's where I think as an industry, we need to be heading. If you're a large company that can build your own team and actually maintain these, it's the same thing we've said about Splunk all along, right? The number of people you actually have to put behind it to do it right is fairly significant. It's a great tool, but it needs a lot of work. And I think as a security community, we need to start building up and seeing more companies jump in that says, I don't care about the technology. I care about what you're actually able to do. So if you're talking about DLP, I don't care if you're using Microsoft or PKware or some of the others that are in there, that this is my objective, just deliver that and make the technology changeable. It's just interchangeable on the back end. It's like swapping out discs on a sand, right? That's what it needs to become.
How would they get their kickbacks from selling the software that they then monitor, Eric? We know this won't happen in VAR land.
I thought you loved VARs.
I do. I love VARs as in, oh, you didn't say bars as in what I'd like to put in front of VARs.
That's so VAR, a very Ayala response.
That's right. No VARs, value-added resellers. Show me the V.
Think about it.
And I'll still yell about it.
Look at Brian, look at what GTS has been doing for the longest time in the telecom space, right? That I don't have to care about who my circuit provider is. You guys are going to handle all of it. It becomes transparent to me.
Yeah, but that's become a commodity tech. I mean, commodity it has a pejorative feel to it, but that's not the intent of it. You have come to consistent tech and interoperable tech.
Yeah.
This is not the case in the rest of the security world. Everyone's built proprietary tech. This is like when you were do you guys remember having to try to negotiate the the ISDN switch type when you were connecting your old ISDN TAs to the to get to whatever, if it was if it was a 3 ESS switch, or if it was, you needed to know, because otherwise it wasn't going to connect up right.
You still do have some of the proprietary protocols in that space, right? Because if you think about WAN routing and stuff like, what is it? Cisco EIGRP is theirs, right?
But that's on top of the physical tech in the phone at the circuit world. The circuit world, at least in the US, has come down to some pretty consistent bases. This is, everyone's trying to innovate in the security world and do something completely different that's not interoperable.
But Dan, I thought XDR was the savior of everything. Everything integrates with everything.
What the hell is XDR anyway?
And I'm back to, again, taking shots at the buzzword bingo that we play in marketing and security.
See, the word Xavier and Savior is so close, but the X was a nickname for the DR called Xavier. You're like, and everyone was like, oh my God, it's the Savior. It's just you're right. It's just a play on words there. Now,
Dr. Xavier was the savior.
Oh, but
Wow,
to
that
Eric
went down a very bizarre rat hole.
is an engineer at Optiv. I go, does he just happen to work in California? And he goes, yeah. I go, yeah, they told me that the deal reg originally came in from California and then got aligned to some rep out here in Michigan. He goes, that is so shady. He goes, all I did was call him and ask him. He goes, I shot him a text to ask him his thoughts on it. He
Deal
goes,
reg being what, Brian? This is an interesting thing because it ended up exactly in my pain point. But what is a deal reg for those that don't know how this slimy backroom used car salesman world works?
the whole deal registration process, when somebody's working with a customer, right, and recommends a product, they typically will go register it with that technology vendor. Now,
But why?
they say that it's to, I'll just call it protection. What ends up happening in a deal reg process is once you deal reg it, that customer can't buy it through anybody else unless the customer tells the technology vendor, no, I don't want to buy through them. I want to buy through them.
Mhm.
And it puts an uncomfortable position out there because you may work with several different people and ask them their opinions and everything else. It doesn't mean you were going to have a project about it. But when people catch wind of it, they immediately go and register that. And sometimes we'll go register the competitors just to make sure they get everybody,
Right.
even though they're not even going to tell you about the other one or the other two or the other three. So when they say protection too, from a price point, the way the price lines work is that now you got like 30 to 40% protection, meaning that if you went and got a competitive quote from somebody else, it's never going to be competitive.
Right.
So it protects their ability to add more margin.
Is that lock-in?
Hmm.
Lock-in? I ran into the same thing so on a renewal of firewalls, we were trying to do a refresh back in the day. And ran into that because I wanted to switch partners, consolidate some spend on that, and the hoops that we had to jump through, the letters we had to write, because the technology providers, because of this, are beholden to the VARs rather than beholden to the customers that are actually buying their equipment. It's crazy.
Yeah. The best part about doing a lot of acquisitions is I have a lot of legal entities and not all of them are registered. And so it's that I'm consolidating my direct purchases. And I was talking dinner at the meeting we were at, the CSA meeting we were at the other night, about with sellers saying, look, I will only buy direct and I will go seek out products that will sell me direct.
Right.
And I'm avoiding those that go through VARs. So, that means certain products are off the table. Great. But I've also found that the more I say I want to buy direct, even those that claim they only sell through VARs do sell direct.
Yeah.
And that's the whole business model of GTS. Like, yeah, we're still getting a percentage on the backside of it where they pay us. But from an indemnification standpoint, there's not one that's higher than the other. Like if you got 4 quotes from somebody, and I just saw this in my previous life, like 4 years ago, where let's say you lined up 3 EDRs and one just happened to be $30, one was $20, and one was $10. When you got the pricing, it was like this one was 34, this one was 32, this one was 30.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you're like, they're all pretty close. And unless you went back to them and told each one of the vendors exactly what the pricing was, you'd say, well, you guys were close, but the gap wasn't that big, right? And it's like, well, really? Like we got really competitive. And then you tell them, but you're not allowed to. Like once you're locked in with the VAR, you can't talk about price technically with the customer to say
Yeah,
the
see,
exact
that's a
price.
line I take out. I line out in any agreements the pricing NDA. I will not do it.
Yeah. And that's why in the TST model that was built in the telco space, I mean, it's 100% like you got
It's
pure
transparent.
visibility
Yeah.
into your pricing, right? If somebody really is that much cheaper than the other person, and this just came about in another project, when I say worked well, it worked well because they got the pricing directly from whoever, and it was, oh wow, this is really competitive,
Right.
right? And then other said product was taking a step backwards, and the VAR was scrambling, right? Because it was representing the other product. Anyhow, you're not the first person to say this, but they're so afraid of what the VARs will think. And I'm like, God, they have built a mafia around this
Shouldn't that be
style
the
of.
first sign that you need to get the fuck out?
Right.
When you're afraid of when you've realized your Stockholm syndrome, it's time to escape your captor.
This
Eric,
gets to the heart of what we've talked about before, though, that this is the erosion of trust with some of those technology partners.
Yeah.
Because now I can't tell if you are pushing a product because it legitimately
Partner meaning
is
VAR in
better.
this case, not
Yes.
partner meaning the actual technology people.
Correct. Yes.
Because let's not confuse that VARs have nothing to do with technology. They just have to do with money pushing and implementing.
Now, I will say there are some smaller VARs out there that I do believe bring some value around it, but I think they're becoming harder and harder to find. But it's the erosion of trust, because I can't tell if you're pushing something because it's technically better and it fits what I need, or if it's because you're getting better margin on it. And that's a problem.
Well, this was the whole model in the fractional CISO space too, is you had a lot of fractional CISOs coming out of that VAR model and were aligned and getting spiffs in the back end for the products that they were recommending. And as I was spinning up Socratic, and in those days, I made the decision not to take any of those and remain independent. And I got to tell you, the customers that I was working with were so excited about the fact that I would be an independent extension to their organization and know that the recommendations I made had no financial impact. They were paying me. They were my boss, not the technology companies.
Right.
And I think that goes a long way to showing the need for independent arbiters, not ones who have ulterior motives that are not transparent to you.
Right. That's why I've always loved the question when you get a partner in the room or a VAR, pick whoever it is, tell me what you're not good at. And if you get somebody that stumbles over it, that can't answer that question, wrong company to be dealing with. Everybody's got limitations. And I mean, kind of bringing it back to the marketing side, because I think the marketing companies of these technologies are doing the exact same thing. They erode trust by we're AI, we're ML, we're all of these different things. And then you get under the covers like,
we're automated. That's my favorite word ever. It's all automatic. No, it's not.
Yeah, that's in all honesty, I blame us. I really do. Because I think about as we get
the three of us.
Just the three of us. Just
the three of us. Yeah.
Great security debate is the downfall of security.
Yeah, for other reasons too.
As all of these different terms and stuff come out, we're not holding feet to the fire, holding technology partners accountable for creating a strict definition of what these things are. So by allowing it to sit in the gray, they can just shape it and mold it any way they want.
Yeah.
I remember talking to a technology advisor at one point that we were looking at some stuff in the behavioral analytics space. And as we got to one technology partner, he goes, it looks great. It sounds great. But he goes, honestly, it's the only technology I've ever had that a customer actually returned after signing the contract. Right.
Wow.
But you never tell that from the marketing side of it because it sounds like such a great story.
Well, good marketers are really good at selling a story. And I have a lot of respect for marketers. because they have a very tough job in changing environment, especially from privacy people like me. Uh, and it's a tough job, but there's a fine line between the art of storytelling and the art of conveying conveying what a product can do and just flat out lying.
Right.
And or future promising on future. This was the last couple of weeks were new phone weeks, and there was a lot of future features. And just like in hardware, in software as well, should never buy. I guess I've made it a practice never to buy on a future feature. Buy and expect that you're only going to get the things you get on day one. If they're not there today, you can't ever count on them showing up. Google and Apple both just said, oh, there's product features coming, and Google is notorious for those features never actually showing up or being shit canned after a month because the ADD sets in and we're bored with this, or it didn't get enough users, and yet another Google messaging app bites the dust. But all of those kinds of things are part of the accountability we have to hold with vendors, so those of us that are buying. And it's funny because the idea that the technology companies are scared of the VARs and customers are effectively scared of the VARs, that there's no there's a person in the middle, there's an entity in the middle that is puppet mastering both sides, and that's not a really good place to be, at least from my seat.
Right. I start to get back to that. There's a lack of faith in companies. The faith is placed in people, right? So regardless of, we'll just pick on VARs, which VAR they go to, I've established trust with the person. And I know there's a level of transparency. And I think that's really what we got to focus on, because at the end of the day, companies are doing what companies do. They're trying to just increase revenue. We've seen this in the stock market and stuff over time, that there's a lot of shady stuff that goes on just to pump up those numbers, because that's what businesses do. It
goes back to, people like to buy from people, right? They still like to, whether it's somebody giving you a recommendation, right? Or somebody that you are working with at the technology provider, right? Like, people still do like to buy from people, right?
I think that's continue, but I think that's changing. I'll come back to why. Go ahead.
And we've seen a little of that in certain commoditized spaces, right? It's like, I need, like you were talking about earlier, a circuit. I need to get a circuit. Where can I get my best one? Because I don't want to have to go deal with AT&T, Lumen, etc. I shouldn't even say those out loud, right? But then you have people put in place that, from a distribution standpoint, can allow that. I see that same thing happening on the security side of the market, because there's certain areas of security that are starting to get commoditized, right? But there are still so many point solutions. And that's where, when you get into the space of working with the different partner agencies who only have familiarity in the telco, they look at the 6,000 plus security vendors. They're like, I don't even know where to begin. That's one of the things that I've been talking to recently, is like, and I know, like, the company I work for, we're not going to be everything to everybody. We're never going to be that, right? But to be able to provide solutions, and a lot of it is smaller SMB companies too, and on one part of the spectrum, and then there's like these larger enterprises on the other. So like, the product sets and solutions are completely different, and it's pointing them to say, like, well, you just need to go talk to an MDR provider. You're not going to go out and buy 6 things and evaluate 6 things, right? If you need a SIM, an EDR, and we could go through acronym bingo here, but it's like, and you only have one person there, or you've depended on an MSP for everything you do. And an MSP is not an MSSP, and a lot of MSSPs, right? So you got managed service providers, managed security service providers, and now even the MSSPs, when you go look behind the curtains, are like, yeah, we spent all this time trying to build this, but it was handling network and firewall before, and now it's like, it's easier for us just to go ahead and provide the MDR because we're not a SOC as a service, right? Or you just go get a SOC as a service. So you're seeing like that whole migration of MDR, and Eric, you were talking about this before when we were talking about SIM in general. I consider MDR providers like the master of SIM, right? So even if you already own one, they're still going to pull all that information into the one they have, right? They can bring it for you and deploy it again, and you'll pay for 2 products, but they can still pull all that information that you have in, because they built all their response capability in it. And that's why you're bringing them, is
Right.
the response part of it. So in a long-winded conversation there, it's also who we put in front of them. Like, I can say, working with a handful of different MDRs, like, this one's really good to work with, this one isn't. It's all the products I think are relatively comparable across the, the 4 or 5 that I deal with, right? And we've talked to even more beyond that. But sometimes I know that if I put this person in front of this person, he's not going to like that person. Like, you just
Right.
know. So when I say people like to buy from people,
It's a
there's still
relationship.
that, yeah, there's certain people that rub people the wrong way. And like, I can now look at it helping customers down in Atlanta, right? Like all the way down into Georgia, like the style of different technology vendors, salespeople versus the people on the East Coast versus Michigan. Like, sometimes I'm blown away. I'm like, you can't say that in a meeting. Oh, he just did. Right. And then I'm getting a note like, is this guy being serious? Like, this is the worst sales approach I've ever seen. I'm like, I know, I want to gnaw my arm off. Right. Like, it makes no sense. Now, backing up a little bit, I do also think, like, Eric, the time has come though, when you said, like, we, the great security vape, put everybody in this position. But we, like, you guys as practitioners, I don't say it's you. Like, think about, at the end of the day, who's buying the product. Because Dan, you said, like, we buy the product. Now imagine, so I was talking to an individual yesterday, and this was very interesting from a consumer standpoint. He had talked about this new vehicle he bought for his wife and how they had it for less than 24 hours, and one of the control modules went down and shut down the entire vehicle. He goes, I
Ouch.
took it right back to the dealership the next day and was like, I want $75,000 check written to me. This car is garbage. And
To
this
know-
person, like, this person works in automotive too. So we were having like a little field day. For those that don't know me, I like to get off, I like to talk. I shouldn't have said that. Cross that part out. I like to talk about automotive. Um, and we were having this conversation. He goes, check this out. And he showed me on Facebook a Facebook group that was created about this certain vehicle made by one of the big 3 that had like 10,000 plus followers in less than a month and a half. He was one of them. He goes, look at this. He goes, every person that's having issues with the vehicle, he goes, I went back and talked to the dealership. He goes, their sales have plummeted overnight. I was like, wow, I'm not on Facebook, but that is really interesting.
It's
'Cause you're selling,
democratizing sales. It's well, but is that any different than the discussions that we have at dinner where we talk, where we, again, the salespeople aren't in part of the discussions that we have where we say, hey, Eric, how has your experience been with this? Or in the Slack channels that are practitioner only. It's the same thing, which is wonderful.
a little bit different though, only because the $75,000 vehicle, once volumes start to go down, the return on investment in their capital hits real quick, right?
True.
And then they have to jump to fix their warranty issues. It's not like, well, we're just going to push it, right, and get the product out there.
Yeah, in software and then in public safety, because there's also health and safety along with it.
Right.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
this is where I see, like, in the software world, like, Eric, you guys were talking earlier about a certain company, about Microsoft pushing changes without telling you till after they do it. Like, if in the automotive world, if you move the assembly line an inch without submitting the change request, and then they want to know why you're moving it, well, okay, we're improving this one process. Oh, so you're going to save money. We want half of it. Give me 50%, right? You're making all these changes. Like this is where I would think, like, companies like GM or Ford, when a change like that happens, and Microsoft could go back and be like, we're going to break you in half. The old vice president of purchasing talking about this at, it wasn't even an automotive ISAC, it was SAE. The hardest problem they're having with contracts right now is with the software companies, that they were so used to getting their way in contracts and the verbiage, and the software companies say, no, no, go find somebody
we're
else.
going to give you beta software and we may or may not fix it.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. There's a couple of things I want to go into on that. One, I really do think, back to people buy from people. I think this is true for us in our generation. I really think it changes for the youngers. I have gotten very, very strong feedback that they'll go out of their way to not have to deal with anybody. So this is where the rise of product-led growth applications and purchasing is really happening. You see it in the consumer world. Like if there's a store that requires you to go do something or something that they can buy it in an app, they're going to go buy it in an app. And this is broad generalizations, of course, but I do think that the idea of direct interaction is reducing. You're seeing it a lot. I mean, it's also a cost savings for the company selling because they don't have to, staff people. But I think that it's going to take a foothold as more of the people younger than us come into these roles. The other piece was escaping me at this early hour of the morning.
I got on a tangent and it just kept going and going and then snowballed all the way back to Microsoft.
Let's do this. Let's click here to go one level deeper, right? So we're picking on VARs. The value proposition of a VAR is rooted in economics, right? It's economies of scale. That if I can aggregate all of these customers together, I can see it creates purchasing power. I can see the pricing everybody's getting, rather than you, single provider, having to go it alone and not knowing if you're getting a good price or not getting a good price, right? So that's supposed to be the value proposition. Does that work? Or does it not work? And it's not unique to our industry, right? I've got a good buddy that's in the medical device field or in the medical field that you see this with smaller hospitals that on their own, they cannot get good pricing because they just don't have the volume. So you have an aggregator that allows them to purchase and it's set prices from that level. At a fundamental level, I truly do believe the value proposition as stated is sound. It makes sense. I think there's a potential there.
But
go ahead.
But that's a creation of its own making. The idea that different prices happen for different people, why not give everybody the same price? Why not, let's go, but I'll take it to automotive. Saturn, best effing car company I've ever dealt with. You know what? It was easy. I bought a Tesla because I didn't have to negotiate. It was, this is the price. This is the price. I know it's the price. It's done. I didn't have to worry. This is the price. And honestly, there's something to that. We're so hell bent in this country on getting the best deal.
Right.
No, just buy the product, cut out all the middle crap, reduce your prices and sell it the same to everybody, whether I want one or a million of them. You know what? You've just cut out an entire layer of BS in the middle. Now I'll flip to the other side in a second, but you've cut off this entire level of bureaucracy in the middle. And I, as the buyer, know this is the price. Or I have tiers and I say, if I need to buy one to 100 or this to that or this to that, it's posted. None of this secrecy. The secrecy is what makes it all. But what makes VARs possible is the secrecy and the aggregation. Who cares? Why should I think that you should be giving better pricing to smaller customers because they need it more. You know what? Their whole company will go out of business if they don't. If they have to pay more for 10 licenses, they might not be able to afford it. They might, especially don't even get me started on the security upsell. This is not on VARs. This is somebody else. But all of this leads to the price should be the price should be the price.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I mean, for the sake of debate, what is the core function of business?
But I think you'll get more users. I think you'll get more buyers if you sell at a linear price. And the core function of business is, and it is unfortunately not, serving the customer. It is making profit, of course, but and I think therein lies the challenge. But there are companies who really do want to help customers above all. And then, you know what? If you help the customer, the profits will come.
I will challenge you there, though, as we think about it in the context of consumer surplus and what a consumer, in this case, the consumer is the buying business, is willing to pay, though. There are many examples out there where you can raise your prices, have less customers, you actually make out you're way ahead.
Absolutely. And you know what? Then you serve a certain market. But don't force me into certain things. If you want to claim to be a small business, like who was the one that just claimed they want to go into small business? It was Splunk. It was Splunk that there was within the last year, somebody came out and said, we really want to focus on the small and medium business. I believe it might have been Splunk. And the idea that Splunk could barely handle figuring out how to support their large customers. Don't go into the small business space if you don't know how to handle them. If you're going to require 700 consultants, it's like SAP saying we want to be for the mom and pop shop. They didn't say that, but if they were, that's the most laughable thing in the world, because SAP requires $1 million consulting engagement just buy the product. Those kinds of things. So
Dan, one thing I want to say though is Eric, you talked about the volume piece, and I have several very close friends that work at VARs. And I've actually explained to a few of them, like, be very careful saying this in front of a customer. It sounds good when you're selling it. When they say, well, why work with us? Because of the size that we are and the amount of sales we do across these products, we get the best pricing.
That's a bullshit line, and everybody knows it. It doesn't have to be that way.
Well, it's not true to begin with.
Why does the middleman's volume get better pricing than the customer? So again, now the customer is different than the user. The customer is the VAR. The customer isn't the end company in that case.
And I'm not going to name names, but there was people sitting in the room, Eric, when we were having that conversation, and the technology provider goes, I'll be the first to say that's not true. If I need to get the deal done this quarter and the customer says, hey, this is where it needs to be, price is there, right? The price is the price. Like, if that's what it's going to take to get it done, it's not because this person gets better pricing or that person gets better pricing, et cetera. It's at the end of the day, like, internally there is, and I think it sucks for the small business owner, but the pricing model where it shows, 0 to 100 or 0 to 500 is X price, and then it goes up all the way down. Now, a lot of these companies are so hell-bent, and when I say companies, technology providers are so hell-bent on the enterprise space as their growth, right?
That's dangerous. But go ahead.
X number of Fortune 500s, right? Like, everyone's got a slide that says
marketing
10% of the Fortune 500s. We got greater than this percent of the Fortune 500s. And I always laugh because some of the companies I know well, and I'm like, you got one of their subsidiaries.
Right.
And now you're calling it out as if you have
we've got GE. Wait, but which part of GE?
Which part? Yeah.
Or GE or old GE, new GE.
Right.
But also very marketing-esque in how that's done. But then when they built, like, I'm going to pick on Expel here and others, they build an SMB team to try to go downstream, right? And I've had the same conversation with ReliaQuest and others. I'm like, guys, you're a SOC as a service, you're an MDR, you'd be perfect in this SMB mid-enterprise area. They're like, oh my, that's where we're trying to jump in. I'm like, but you don't work in the distribution channel. You do realize all those small companies buy through, a trusted partner agency that they get all their circuits from. They're like, do they resell? I'm like, no, they don't. You just work with them directly. They're like, that's not what we're doing. Expel ends up firing their entire SMB team, the entire team, because it didn't hit the growth they want. I'm like, how, guys? That's the fastest growing segment right now. Like, it's not because of the people you hired, it's the process that has to go through this one channel model. That's your problem.
Well, that gets to the heart of the innovator's dilemma, right? That as you look at companies that spin up something net new, that if you measure the new company, the new product, whatever it is, on the same metrics by something that is already much more mature, entrenched in the industry, whatever you're selling into, it's almost always going to fail. That you have to create a whole new set of metrics to measure that organization.
Yeah, what got you here won't get you there. Let's drop a few more book titles out there, will you?
It's a good one.
It's anything, but all of this then leads to a customer that doesn't know where to turn. There's you can't, if I can't buy direct and I can't trust the people that are required to sell it to me, what do I do? And are you seeing people disappear, like just go away or go to PLG only companies in order to just avoid the whole mess. And this helps companies that are growing or that are creating new cool innovations that are not, that aren't yet fully baked. And I love the idea of bleeding edge, and especially in the security space, because there's a lot of innovation. And I'm a big believer of get in with those companies early before they become big, and you can help shape the products. Now, not every company has the people, time, or desire to grow with a company, but I think it's a real option that takes you out of that space. Now, unfortunately, those companies then will also get approached by the mafia and said, you will sell through the VAR, or you will sell through the channel, or you will not sell into these markets. And as part of that growth desire to large enterprise, that is the path that it feels like you need to take. But I want to switch it around and put on a different hat. And in this case, it'll be a Michigan hat, because it'll be the opposite side. No, the idea that there are companies that don't invest in their own IT or their own security and have put it all out to pasture, or put it all out into third parties. And so therefore you do need some of that partnership out there in order to be able to sell your product. But making it the only path is where I get concerned.
Yeah. I mean, going back to Brian, what you were talking about on the number of companies, so the NASCAR slide, right? Here's all the companies that have bought our product. In all honesty, I'm not going to knock the marketers. They're doing what they were taught to do. Yeah. You're trying on human nature, which one of our strongest feelings is risk aversion, the aversion to loss, right? It's an irrational feeling, but it's super powerful and it's present. And there's a herd mentality. Well, if all of these guys went with this product, how could I go wrong, right? It's the old adage, nobody got fired for buying Cisco.
Until recently.
But so a lot of truth there too, though, like in terms of the marketing, the herd mentality, etc. But I do also think, like, you get, as a technology company, you get what you pay for in the salespeople that you bring in. And if you have a really good associate who understands his market, his area, it's not about putting a slide up there that says, yeah, we have 10% of the Fortune 500, here's a bunch of names. You know who you're talking to, right? I know this person knows these 30, 40 people in the area. I also know he has a good relationship with this person. I know this person's looked at the product. I just need to find a way to be transparent with the person who already owns the product, to let them know, like, hey, if you get a chance, I talked to Dan, feel free to give him an honest opinion of what you thought, what you like, what you don't like. I talked
to Dan too.
And then you give an honest opinion to Dan, and now Dan doesn't need to look at 8 slides. He's like, I trust Eric, right? Like, practitioners trust practitioners. And if someone says, I used it, but here's the use cases I used it for, just so you know, I only bought this one module to solve this one problem. I didn't look at their other 20 things. Then you're like, okay, so you needed something to solve X. You didn't even have a project around all this other stuff. I need to talk to someone that's actually used everything, right?
Right.
And it's just the way
Well, you saw the power of that play out while we were at GurCon. I think you were around, but there was certain technology partner that I was talking about with another practitioner, and just by me vouching for it, that it was all of a sudden a turn and go, all right, let's set up a meeting on that. And that's what I think. There's still a large contingent of sales individuals that don't understand the relationships and how we work on the backside talking about the technologies. And that's why we still get the cold calls. LinkedIn is technically just the new venue for cold calls. It doesn't work.
When I was at Abnormal, like, I didn't even know that some of the things that were going on behind the scenes, where they created canned emails from the CISO, from our CISO, that were being sent out on my behalf. But I would get like a reply from someone I knew where they would add me to it and say, hey, thank you. I appreciate the email, but I'm working with Brian, and when the time's right, we'll take a look. And I then go down and be like, who sent this? And I'm like, right. Oh my God, that is the worst canned email ever. but your marketing team then using your CISO to send notes out to people that you've talked to because they have this stupid thing called MedPick to keep track of everything you do in your life that
Right.
judges you as a human being to describe whether or not you get to keep your job. So you got people just typing in all these notes like, yeah, I met with this guy, I met with this guy, I met with this guy. And then those people are getting bombarded with stupid crap from an actual practitioner that doesn't know the company is using him to do it. That is vile garbage.
Yeah. If there's marketers that
Amen.
are listening, I take that one to heart. Stop those. We all know we've been seeing this for the longest time. It's a drip campaign.
Yes.
We need disingenuous when we see it come across. There is no genuine interest from the C-suite to reach out to me, a smaller company in the grand scheme of things. So it starts to erode a lot of the trust that we have.
Yeah, I was for a friend of mine that doesn't have a security team was asking me to take a look at a product their marketing team wanted to implement, and it was a personalization. It was make your emails personalized without being personal, or something to that effect. And they wanted to spend money on this. And I said, do people actually open these things? Because these are exactly the kind of, I see you like this. I like this too. We should have a meeting. That kind of stuff. That is the first thing that just gets completely nuked out of my system.
It's like the Amazon, those who bought this also bought this.
Now, those can be a little helpful because when you think about the accessory that goes with the particular camera or whatever, these are the compatible ones. Perhaps those are a little more useful, but like cold calls that include a personal fact about me, or the one that I really love is the one where somebody on like a video board on a whiteboard has written my name, or the one then 3 later comes back and says, I see you open my mail 3 times. Why aren't you replying?
Those are the worst. I couldn't mute fast enough when you defended the fact, like, on the episode, you're like, well, Eric, actually, I really like that because
on occasion it's useful.
You know where I find it useful? This is like going to be such a slam on myself. Like, I went to buy this light or this in-ground light that it's the part that you bury. And I
Wait,
was
you're
like,
burying a light? Are you trying to create places for the chipmunks to run well lit underground, or
no, so it's the oh, what do you call it? It's the post that goes into the ground and the electrical wire runs into it. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. Thinking that the post sticks out of the ground. No, the post goes all the way down to the ground. Then you got to buy a thing that screws into that. Well, I hadn't gotten that far into it. I'm just like, that's what I want. And then when I went to go purchase it, it said other people have also bought this and this. Oh yeah, I need the post that goes on top of the post, and I need the light. So when you say like people typically also buy this and this, that was helpful for me.
from the
Right?
people
Like
who from the world that brought you buy a TV does not include HDMI cable.
Yeah, it also showed me that what I thought was going to cost me $30-$40 was really $150 for each light by the time I got all 3 components, right? It was like the module, right?
Now
Like,
that's
oh, you
good
really like
marketing.
it?
Right.
Like you also need this, and by the way, you got to buy a light bulb. The light bulb I knew, the wires I knew, but all the other things I was like, oh, okay. That added up really quick.
I mean,
Oh,
just like SKUs in Splunk or Cisco or Checkpoint.
back to the videos too, though. You said the guy writing your name on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
In
Creepy as
all the
hell.
crap that I've gotten over the last 3 years, there was this guy who did a quick video and he totally related it to Michigan State. And he goes, hey, he goes, well, I'm not like, it was something like, well, I'm not a Spartan. He goes, I have to say, he goes, I have been impressed with what they've done recently. If someone sent me another video with, I know you're a Spartan, don't take it the wrong way. I know it's probably a really tough time for you. Would you still want to get together and talk? I'd probably laugh, right? And be like,
And then
I
delete.
love the fact that you went a little bit deeper and figured out where I went to school, something to make it a little more personable because you don't know me and you're being tasked with reaching out. But
Right.
the canned emails and the drip campaigns and everything else, I'm like, just because maybe it worked on 3 accounts, 4 accounts when you guys first started doing it, that's 4 out of how many, right? And then whatever numbers you're using to skew that today, where it's like now the person's telling the sales guy, hey, I know you got in there, but can you also tag it to me too, so that I get credit? And it's like, I tell you this, salespeople don't even want to argue with those people, so they just do it, right? And now it makes it look so. Salespeople are also part of the problem. When you allow marketing to get credit for something like that, it only perpetuates the problem even longer and further down the chain. And then when you have really techie people that started the company and all they know is data analytics, right? They don't care who the person is, the relationships, anything. It's like salespeople are vile garbage. Just show me the numbers, who's doing good, who isn't. Fire him, promote all the BDRs because they sent 10,000 emails last month. That's work. That takes effort.
It's funny how the customer side is very different, because I would think fire all the BDRs because they annoy the crap out of me with continuous bombardment, and promote the one guy who actually sits and listens. But the what I would love to see is all of that money spent on marketing software used to reduce the total cost of goods sold, and then get us to a better license price across the board, especially for small and medium businesses.
Full circle.
Yeah, if we would have done this last night when I had just left the pumpkin party and was like 6-7 beers deep, I think I probably would have popped the vein.
Oh, you nearly did. I saw it.
But in their defense, I mean, in their defense, from a sales perspective, we have been asking for some of this in the context of business, that if you're going to come in and sell me on something, do your research, read my 10K, understand the pain points, understand some of those risks.
But don't cornball it up with a stupid video that is on a whiteboard just to try to get my eyeballs.
I go back, I'm going to say it's disingenuous. Put in some more effort than just that, right? Most of us are extremely transparent on the events we go to and what we're doing. Come out. Find me, meet in person. I mean, in all honesty, like, as I think about accepting stuff on LinkedIn, vast majority of the time, unless I've actually met you in person or sometimes a webinar, I will not accept it.
Right.
Right. In these days, I can't tell the difference between a real person or somebody that's going to leverage that connection to trust to actually scam somebody else. And I don't want to be sitting in the center of that.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Sales 101, right, is building relationships. Right. So here's the fault of two sides of the coin here. One, the people that work for technology providers, and those technology providers are startups, and those startups took venture capital and private equity, and they need to see return in a very short period of time. So they got guns. They don't, in the literal sense, to people's heads, like, you have to hit these numbers. So now you have sales guys going out, and a guy shows up to the CSA event, and instead of walking up right to Eric after he kicks a field goal at the big house to say, whoa, nice leg, that was awesome, right? Fist bump, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I'm Brian. Now he's walking up right after he kicked the field goal, doesn't even mention anything about nice leg. He's like, hi, Eric, I've been trying to take a moment to talk to you. I'm Brian from said company. I apologize, I had sent a few notes, but I just wanted to come over and introduce myself. I work in this space, and I know that you, I think, have a project around it because I talked to a few people who told me you did. I'd really like you to take a look at this. Wow. Worst approach ever.
Might as well just open with buy my book. So guys, unfortunately, we are out of time. This is a topic that I know we could talk about and have talked about for hours and hours and hours. So it'll have to wait for for part 2 of whatever we name this episode. But we'll do it again soon. So thank you, Eric. Thank you, Brian. And thanks to the listener, as always, for being here and for being part of our fun and our therapy, because honestly, that's really what this is. Thanks so much for being here. You can reach us on our website, www.greatsecurity-debate.net. You can find us on just about every podcast application that'll let us register there. Search for Great Security Debate. And we're on YouTube, www.youtube.com/@Great Security Debate. If you want to email us, feedback@greatsecurity-debate.net. And I'm sure you can find Eric on LinkedIn, where he will gladly accept your unsolicited connection request. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again on the next Great Security Debate.